You're watching Byline Wilmington on CBS 10 WILM. Here's your host, Don Ansell.
Rick Catlin, New Hanover County Commissioner and a board member of the Cape Fear Public Utility Authority, is our guest on one side, and Chad O'Shields, who is a watchdog and a blogger. And I've been reading his blogs about the Cape Fear Public Utility Authority for quite a while, and he's been sometimes very critical of the authority, and we'll talk about some of the criticisms you've had. And there was a meeting this past week about rate structure and changing rates, and we'll talk about that in a minute. But just to be clear, are any other approvals outside the operating board needed to increase rates?
No.
No. So there's no oversight when it comes to
rate structure? No, none whatsoever. No.
Or how they...
Not even the governor can tell them they can't do this.
That's
no
right.
one can.
Let's talk about some of the other, or the basic criticisms about the authority. That one is that it was poorly conceived and the consolidation process was poorly executed.
I agree. I agree, and I think that there's no sunset on the agreement. And now that we've been in it a few years, we see some problems. I think it would be very wise and prudent to revisit it and to see if we couldn't adjust it.
I believe it's important to point out that Rick's not the only one. I mean, there are members on the board now that were, elected officials who were completely opposed to the formation of this authority.
This is a change as to when it was first
put
together.
When it was being put together, were opposed to it.
That's correct.
Charlie Rivenbark's one. He's spoken out, and that he was opposed to this, but now he's on there trying to advocate for some positive change and kind of rein things in a little bit. So Rick's not alone in his.
When it was created and it started to draw all this criticism, it looked like they built a fortress around the authority and said, no, we're forging ahead. You're wrong. That environment's changing.
You're right, and I think a big problem there too, Don, was all of us saw what was going on. None of us realized really what had happened until it was too late, until we started seeing these rate changes and talk about spending, and that, hey, rates used to be subsidized, now they're not. Guess what's going to happen? They're going to go up a lot. And it's hindsight's 20/20, and it wasn't until after it happened that we really realized what we had done.
How long have you been watching this whole process unfold and blogging about it?
Just like I said, I heard about it, but wasn't paying too much attention. When I became a grassroots advocate for change, I guess you might say, was when I got my first bill. When I got my first bill, I was at the next meeting, and have literally been at every meeting. I knew something had gone wrong. I didn't know what, but the more I looked into it, I started seeing these little things, and not just criticize, but hey, these are some changes. We need to address these things. Some things need to be changed, and working to that.
And it's kind of interesting because when you started, you were labeled a troublemaker, and as things have evolved, you've become a problem solver.
Well, and that was, the board at that time, they were in the defense mode. They're being hammered from all sides. So, with this, they could say this guy's causing trouble. But again, my goal at that time was to advocate for change. So I could see that.
Rick, do you think the public was misled about how the process would unfold and what it would cost to undertake the mission?
I don't know if they were misled, but they were surprised. I'm not sure that anybody that created the authority really knew what they were doing. The authority itself was like an unborn child, and the city and the county were negotiating with it, saying this is what you're going to have to do when you grow up. And now that we're starting to grow up, we're starting to see some of the problems.
There was a letter just last week in the Star News, and I'll just quote it here. The letter writer said, quote, "I was under the impression that consolidating the city, county, water, and sewer services would be an improvement. Instead, it's been consistent rate increases and billing problems." That was a letter to the Star News.
Well, to speak to that, first of all, there used to be some subsidy, and we don't have that anymore. We're dealing with deferred maintenance, which was not dealt with before, which needs to be, and that's another reason for the cost. And thirdly, the utility authority had a guiding principle when it was formed that nobody loses their job. When you do a consolidation, there's always a reduction in force and reduction in staff, and there are efficiencies that you expect in a consolidation, and the authority actually hired people. So we've on our part of it, you can't put all the blame on the city and the county. The authority itself, I think, still has a long way to go to find efficiencies.
Why did they put that premise?
It was politically popular. To some degree, elected officials feel at least in the past, felt a responsibility to protect the jobs of the city and the county employees. And if that becomes your
Have they ever heard the word Tea Party?
Yeah, that's right. If that's your guiding principle, you're not going to have a successful consolidation.
Well, it was certainly an easy way to bring employees on board. You know, they might have opposed it, but when you say, "Hey, everybody's keeping their jobs," okay, well, let's go ahead. To support the transition.
It made it easier, but it didn't make it right.
Okay. And this is to both of you, and both of you could respond. Do you think the city and county were actually anxious to shed responsibility for an antiquated, compromised system that had the state ready to take over because of the lack of attention and maintenance and repair?
I mean, I would say so. Matter of fact, in my opinion, if you look at some of the reasons why these authorities are created, some of the articles I've read, it becomes such a, you know, they're taxing people to pay for these facilities for expansion, and some of the things I've read at the state level say, hey, you know, they make a decision to do this because it's easier to send somebody a bill than say I'm raising your taxes. So we get this in the form of a bill, and again, that's why it's
they were
easier
subsidizing it, they weren't maintaining it, and it was like bring it to where it's going to be, the bills are going to have to go way up.
Ugly.
So you take it and
well,
deal with it.
There was maintenance, and there were some good things going on, but just not as much as needed to be. But yeah, to answer your question, that was back. You remember that was back during the big sewer leaks, and the EPA and the moratorium, and the political pressure was intense. And being able to wash your hands of that and saying I don't control it anymore was very attractive. And I think to that end, the process was rushed.
What was the consolidation concept based on a faulty premise of what it would take to run the authority and pay for the upgrades and the expansions that are needed for the future?
No, I don't think that everything was thought out. And now that we've done it for a while, let's revisit it. Let's adjust it. Let's fix some things that are wrong. And I think that every few years it ought to come back for renegotiation.
And I think Rick makes a good point. Is they set this up, and they didn't know all that they were getting into. It's a learning process, and they are in a constant process of changing things, changing statutes.
Where's the buck stop on that? Where does the public go? Oh, you're the folks responsible. Is it the commission and the
right
city
now?
council?
Right now, it's the board. It's the authority board, and I am, as a board member, trying to encourage a renegotiation of the interlocal agreement.
You're talking about the incorporation
with
the
city and the county. Let's go back to the drawing table, and let's take what we've learned in the last few years and let's negotiate.
Okay, we're going to take a break again. When we come back, we'll talk about rates, your bills. Stay with us.